StudyIQ IAS, अब तैयारी हुई affordable.
Dear students, welcome to our next lecture on the series Ethical Case Studies. And today we will take up an important case, a new dimension which I have not seen till this point of time. Today the case study is related to the need for having an emotional intelligence. So today in the present world, to be very successful at our work and also in our personal life, so what is found to be more important rather than just intelligence is what is called as emotional intelligence. And this emotional intelligence is in fact very important for an officer who is going to lead a team, especially for the students preparing for civil service, because they may have to face a number of issues at work and they may have to understand the emotions of other people before they start communicating and the relevant and appropriate time in which they have to communicate the things. And even if something goes wrong, how you are able to control your emotions, how you are able to get back to your work and motivate yourself. And do not lose control because of something unfortunate that has happened at work. So this is an excellent case study of how emotional intelligence can play a very important role, not only at the workplace, and how if you take things seriously at the workplace, how it can impact your personal life also. Not just your personal life and the way that you interact with the outside world. And that can have an impact on the attitude of the individuals as well. So this is exactly what we are going to study in this particular case. A good case study. So in my opinion, this is a new dimension. We have not discussed such a case study, which is related to both attitude as well as emotional intelligence, which is both included in the syllabus of ethics case study paper 4. So let me just get into this particular case study. Let me just explain this particular case study, and then we'll also see the directives in this particular case study. So before I proceed further, StudyIQ has launched its long-term batches for the month of September. So students who are planning to appear for 2025 examination, so they can all appear, they can take note of this particular course. So the batches are likely to start from 16th of September. It would be an evening batch, online batch. And the courses has number of features. You can just go through the brochure from the StudyIQ website. You will get to know the important features of this particular course. So the course itself will go for around 1.5 years, and then students will be prepared for the 2025 prelims examination, and the support will be provided till the interview stage if they clear the successive stages. Okay, so if you want to get an additional discount on this course, you can use my code BabuLife. So not only on this particular course, but on any course that you wanted to purchase from StudyIQ, you can use my code. That will get you an additional discount on the courses. So now let me go to the case. Let me briefly explain you about the case, and then I'll proceed with the directives in this particular case study. Now see what is the case is all about. So Pawan is a state government employee. So Pawan is an employee in the state government, and he has been working in the state government for more than 10 years. So it is not that he is a very new officer. So Pawan, along with some of his colleagues, has recently been transferred to a new office. They are transferred to the new office, and after the transfer is over, Pawan makes a general inquiry about his new senior officer, the new boss in that office, the head of the office where he is transferred right now. And the general impression in the office is that his boss is seen to be a very insensitive person. He is not very sensitive to the needs of others. He is very insensitive, and at the same time he is found to be well versed of the work. He is aware of his nature of duties, and also he is suffering from some disturbed personal life. So his personal life is not good. So it is an indication, but probably because of his personal life is not good, he is also carrying forward that work, and that may also strain the relationship between him and the other individuals. So Pawan makes his inquiry, and then they started working. So initially it all seems to be well, but as time progressed, the relationship between Pawan and his senior officer was not very good. It has been found by Pawan that his senior officer is belittling him in number of circumstances. Belittling him means he is not given too much of importance, or not even giving too much of importance, he is been disregarded in most of the cases. So wherever in the public meetings or public forum where Pawan is trying to give some suggestions to improve upon the work, that has not been taken seriously. Not only it has not been taken seriously by his senior officer, but Pawan has also been criticized publicly in front of others. And this is not a one-off incident. This has happened more frequently. And it has also been very clear to Pawan that despite that there is no serious lapses in the kind of work that he do, that means he is performing a decently good job, but despite that his senior is doing him like that. And because of this continuous practice that is happening there, it has also affected the confidence and the self-esteem of Pawan. So, this is very, very important aspect of the case study. So, because it has affected the confidence and self-esteem of Pawan, so Pawan has also started carrying forward to his home. So, he is very disturbed at work and he carried forward this disturbance to his home as well. And it is also found that he has also started displacing his angers to other family members. And for no reason, Pawan loses temper at home and he has been angry with his wife and other family members. And because of all these things continuously, now Pawan is completely disturbed and he also feels that he is helpless in this particular situation. Now, this is the case study that is exactly given. So, under the present circumstances, we will have to understand the directives given in the question. So, we will have to answer all those questions. And it is also said in this particular case, because of all the things that has happened in the office and his kind of reaction at the home, it has also had a serious impact on the physical as well as the mental health of Pawan. Now, this is exactly what is the case is giving. So, under such a circumstances, certain directives are given. So, let me just quickly get into the directives. So, what are the options available with Pawan to cope up with the situation? So, looking into this particular case, putting yourself in Pawan's position. So, what kind of options would you suggest under present circumstances? That is the first directive. Look into the second directive. What approach Pawan should adopt for bringing peace, tranquility and congenial environment in the office and home? So, what kind of efforts should Pawan take so that it can bring a good environment not only at the work but also at home? Now, the third directive is, as an outsider, what are your suggestions for both boss and subordinate to overcome the situation and for improving the work performance, mental and emotional hygiene? So, there is a conflict between the boss and Pawan, who is a subordinate in this case. So, what kind of suggestion as an outsider who is looking into this particular case is the third directive that is asked. And in the above scenario, what type of training would you suggest to the officers at the various level in the government offices? So, is there a need for some generalized training? Now, what could be the possible reason for occurrence of such things where a senior officer is openly humiliating his subordinate and that is having an impact on his mental health? That is a serious ethical concern. And not only that, this officer, junior officer who has been humiliated, he is displacing his anger to somebody else at the home, which is also having an impact upon his personal life. This is a very, very serious concern. So, what is the most important thing? This entire case is revolving around an idea of what is called as emotional intelligence. So, what is this emotional intelligence? Now, emotional intelligence is an ability of an individual to understand his own feelings. Not only understand his own feelings, he is also in a position to understand the feelings of others, the mood of others, and accordingly he will communicate and accordingly he will react. Suppose if he finds that the mood of that particular person is not appropriate, so that is not the time to communicate with that particular person. Or if that person is angry, and if he said something, this person will not take it too seriously. This person will not take it very serious and very personal, and he will not display that to others. Now, these are the things that will be done by a person with a high level of emotional intelligence. So, clearly in this case, there is a lack of emotional intelligence both on the part of his senior officer and also on the part of Pawan. So, that is a very clear thing. And the second aspect, in my opinion, what this case is also related about is also related to the attitude of an individual. So, to my opinion, so these are the areas where this particular case study is related. Emotional intelligence and in applications in administration. So, what is the role of emotional intelligence in administration, in government services? That is one aspect of it. Second is attitude, its influence and relationship with thought and behavior. Now, what has happened over a period of time is that whatever happened to Pawan is unfortunate, but what has Pawan seen is, so what is his attitude? Attitude is the way that you look into something. Attitude is the way by which you evaluate something. Now, what has happened over a period of time? So, whatever has happened to Pawan in the office, he has thought that this is the general worldview. This is normally his life is, but his life is not bad. In fact, in this particular case study, it is also said that his wife has been very supportive to Pawan. But the wife has been made a victim of his anger, his displaced anger. So that means his personal life is all good, but whatever has happened in his professional life is really unfortunate. But he has carried forward that, and he has seen that everything is not good with him, and he is trying to project the same thing at the home as well. So he has developed a negative attitude towards his life. So it also has a relation to the kind of attitude that we carry. So overall, these are the two important subject matter in this particular case study. Let me just quickly proceed to the directives that is given in the question. Now, before I get into the directives given in the question, so these are all the broadly the stakeholders. So here you can see Pawan and his colleagues. So 5 colleagues were transferred along with him. Pawan and the family members, because Pawan is displacing his anger towards his family members. He is not able to do that in the office, so he is doing that to the family members. His senior officer, of course, who is very insensitive and who has been harassing Pawan for some time. And the other office staffs, although the case is not clearly saying what happens to the other office staffs, but others might also be facing similar circumstances. So overall, it can impact the work environment, the quality of work, the service that they provide to the people. So all these things might get affected, and in general, the public may also be related to this particular case. So these are the basic stakeholders in this particular case. So now let us quickly get into the first directive that is asked in the question. What are the options available to Pawan to cope up with the situation? So how or what kind of steps he can take to cope up with the what is happening to him? So what are the possible options? Not necessarily every option is the right option. So whatever that comes to your mind. Here the ethical issue is the lack of emotional intelligence. It is also having an impact on the personal life. And then Pawan is displacing that. He is not able to do it to his officer, but he is displacing that at his home, and it is also affecting his personal life. So what are the various options available with the Pawan to cope up with the above situation? So see here, one, Pawan can continue displacing his anger towards his wife and family members. So this is what he is doing right now. So one option is he can continue doing that. Whatever happens in the office is unfortunate. Pawan is being criticized publicly, and that has led to loss of self-confidence and self-esteem. So of course, he is very angry out of this particular situation. And what he does, because he is angry, he comes out and he displaces his anger towards the family members, especially towards his wife. So this is one way that he is escaping out of what is happening in the office. But this is not a very good thing. So this is not a very good thing, because either Pawan is happy, nor he is making his family members happy, nor he is taking action against something which is unjust, which is happening against him. Although this could be one of the option by which he can transfer and by which he can let out the frustration that he has got, but this is not the best option, I would say. The second thing is Pawan can request transfer from the office, citing some personal reasons. So Pawan understand that this is becoming perpetual, this is becoming continuous, and the abuse and the harassment of his officer, senior officer, is continuing. So the one way to escape out of this is getting a transfer from this particular office. Alright, so this can put an end to some extent to what he is facing and what he is going through. But is it a best solution? Is it the way that he can put an end into this particular problem? So here he is not facing the issue. He is just escaping from that particular issue that is happening around him. And you never know when he has gone to the next office. In the next office also he can face the same issue. So here he is not trying to address the issue, but rather he is trying to escape from whatever he is going through. So this is again not a best solution or the best option here. Although the question doesn't ask you, but you should have an idea about what you are writing. Now come to the third option, that is that Pawan can counter his senior officer as and when he publicly criticizes him, as it is against his dignity and respect, and it is his duty to protect his self-respect. Yes, as an individual, in order to ensure our dignity and self-respect, we'll have to take actions. That is definitely true. So the third option is saying whenever the senior officer is publicly criticizing Pawan, possibly Pawan should also counter his senior officer. And in that way, he can teach a lesson to his senior officer that Pawan is not going to be a mute spectator of his continuous harassment. So this is one option. Yes, as an individual, we'll have to protect and we'll have to defend our self-respect. But is this the best option? Because if he is publicly countering his senior officer, so this might affect his ego. And it can lead to the escalation of the conflict, and we do not know to what level it can escalate the conflict. And also it can be seen as an insubordination. So there can be some kind of conduct based on the conduct rules, some kind of action may be initiated against the Pawan. But although I am not saying that he should not do that, but possibly he may not do that in the first instance, or possibly he may not do that in public. Okay. So again, this is something that everybody has to do, but not at a very first step. This is not the first step that you take in addressing this particular issue. Now, come to the next option that is given here. Pawan along with other colleagues forward a complaint to the head of the office reporting insensitive behavior and harassment he is subjected to. So, this could be also the possible solution. So, Pawan, what he can do is that if there are other colleagues who are also facing a similar treatment, so probably they can write a letter with, if they have any evidences, they can put it and they can send it to the head office, so that it may be looked upon and appropriate action may be taken against the senior officer, because they cannot continue to undergo the harassment. That is not the right thing. But is this the best option? This can be done, but I would say that something else has to be tried out before all these things are done. So, now let us come to the last option that that Pawan can do. So, Pawan should introspect and try to understand the issue. First of all, Pawan has to understand why this is happening. Is it happening only with me? Is my senior officer doing it only with me, or he is also doing with others? Although it is not a clear thing, if the senior officer is doing with everybody, then the problem is not with Pawan. Then the problem might be that the problem lies with the senior officer and he has no control over that as to how he is behaving. So, first he has to understand that, and once he finds whether he has got any locus of control, whether he has some control over the situation, that will help him to put him at peace. Because if something is beyond your control, you don't have to take it too seriously, you don't have to take it personally. So, first assessment is that Pawan has to introspect. Try to see where the issue is all about, where it is all happening. And if he comes to a conclusion that it is only happening with me, then Pawan should also think that why it is only happening with him. Is it something that he is trying to be over smart? Is there some mistake on his part? Is he not communicating properly with the boss? And at the same time, it is also clearly said that in this particular case, that he is also, the senior officer is also going through some personal problems. So, Pawan has to introspect what exactly is the issue here. So, what could be the possible reasons? And after identifying the possible reasons, he has to openly communicate with his senior officer in person, in private, not in front of everyone. So, possibly politely he can ask for an appointment with the senior officer, and in person he can go and discuss as to, and he should also let know the senior officer as to what he is undergoing. And if he finds that if at all anything that could change the situation, Pawan should take all those actions by discussing and openly communicating with the senior officer. So, I would say this is the first step that Pawan should try. And most importantly, Pawan should not take things seriously if he has no control over that. And most importantly, he should not carry it forward, and he should not develop a negative attitude in general towards life. And that is one of the reasons that why he is displaying his anger towards the family members and his wife. So, the moment he is going to counter, the moment he is going to openly talk with his senior officer, then there is a possibility that a solution can be brought to this particular issue. And if solution doesn't arise, then probably Pawan can think about the other things, probably because he'll have to face the conflict, you cannot run away from the conflict. So, probably you can write it to the senior management, or probably you can also counter your boss, probably that is the way that you will have to go about, because you cannot let lose your self-control. You cannot lose your self-respect and self-esteem. So, but there are ways that have to do it. So, first is not direct conflict, but you are trying to avoid the conflict. Okay. So, to me this is the best thing that he can start with, and probably if solutions are not arising, then the other things. Okay, come to the directive number 2. What approach Pawan should adopt for bringing peace, tranquility and congenial environment at office and home? Now, the major issue in this particular case is that there is a conflict. The conflict is between Pawan and the senior officer. Although Pawan is not willing to have a conflict, but the conflict has already arisen and there is a toxic relationship. And because of this toxic relationship between Pawan and the senior officer, it ultimately affects the peace of mind of Pawan. So, he has to do everything to get this thing ready. So, what he can do is, all that he has to work is that he has to work on what is called as conflict management, how to eliminate this conflict that is happening right now, and to avoid the conflict management and to deal with this conflict management effectively. So, he should be well versed in what is called as emotional intelligence. So, to me, one single most important thing that Pawan has to do is that he has to work on his emotional intelligence. Probably he has to understand as to what is the issue that his senior officer is going through. Probably he has to understand what kind of egoistic person is a senior officer if he is an egoistic person. So if he is considered to be an egoistic person, then it is better that if you want to give some suggestions, so probably you can do that in a private thing rather than doing it in a public place. And try to understand as to what exactly is the problem of a senior officer. That is what is all about emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is not only that you can assess your own feelings, you can also understand the feeling of the other person, and accordingly you will communicate, accordingly you will act. So there may be few instances or meetings where Pawan may not recommend anything, or if he has to do something, as I already said, he can do it in his private chamber. And even if the boss is angry, go to him personally and talk to him politely and tell him that this is really unfortunate, or probably if there is a miscommunication, try to rectify those things, or try to remain silent for few days so that there is a possibility that the situation can normalize. So this is what is all about emotional intelligence. So he has to take everything to resolve the conflict, which may also includes open communication with his boss. But what actually Pawan is doing is he is just displacing his anger. He is just displacing his anger, which is also called in psychological terms, which is called as displacement. That if you are angry with someone and if you are not able to do anything with that particular person, you try to displace your anger to someone who is inferior to you. So probably in this case is the family members. So what he is doing is displacement or displacing his anger towards the family members. So this is not the solution to this particular issue, and this is done by him because he is not emotionally intelligent or to deal with this particular issue. So one has to be emotionally intelligent to deal with this particular issue, and whatever it takes, he has to do that. If it requires an open communication, he should do that as well. And then the next thing is positive attitude. Now, what has been happening in Pawan's case is Pawan is developing a generalized attitude towards the world. And his generalized attitude is whatever happening in his office, he is trying to generalize that in the outside world also. He is trying to generalize that he has been a victim of harassment, and he has been a victim of this insensitive treatment by his boss, and that is how things will happen to him in the outside world as well. But that is not the case. What happens in office is unfortunate, but there is no need to generalize that in the other places also. So you should have a positive attitude, the way you look at things, and try to address these issues. Okay. So these are the two important things I think Power has to take care of to address this particular issue. Okay, come to the directive number C. As an outsider, so someone who is aware of this particular case, as an outsider, what are your suggestions for both boss and subordinate to overcome the situation and for improving the work performance, mental and the emotional hygiene? So this is the next thing. So as an outsider, what are your suggestions to overcome this particular situation, to improve upon the work performance and to improve the emotional hygiene of the people? So first and foremost thing is that people should be emotionally intelligent. So people have to work on their emotional intelligence, very, very important. And this emotional intelligence is something that right from our academic that when we are in the school, college, right through our academic coaching. So people should also be aware that how important is emotional intelligence. So people should work, everyone should work on their emotional intelligence. And then open communication is very, very important. So many times people avoid conflict, they try to avoid conflict. But as per number of management theories, you understand that conflict is unavoidable in any management. Conflict is unavoidable in any organization. So conflict are likely to arise, but how do you address that particular conflict? And to address a conflict, one of the best possible way is having an open communication. So the employee should also be trained in having an open communication. And then if need be, people should not hesitate to go for psychological therapies. They can take the help of the psychologist. So these are the ways by which I think they can be addressing these issues. And in the same way, the performance could also be improved in the organization. Because here in this case, the boss is not emotionally intelligent and so is Pawan. Although Pawan has not initiated it, but because he is not emotionally intelligent enough to handle the issue, he has fallen victim to that, and there is no open communication that is happening. Pawan has been suffering from loss of self-control and his self-esteem, but he has not communicated. And all the people under such a circumstances, they require what is called as psychological therapies. So these are the ways I think the issues can be addressed to some extent. In the above scenario, what type of training would you suggest to the officers at the various levels in the government offices? So, in fact, in the government offices, they undergo a lot of stress because of the workload, burden and all those things. And on top of that, some of the officers might also have a disturbed personal relationship. So, that is going to add few more difficulties to them as well. So, under such a circumstances, what kind of training may be given to them? So, first is, as I already said, there should be a specific training to assess the emotional intelligence of the officers. And if the scores are low in the emotional intelligence, then a specific training module has to be devised in order to boost their emotional intelligence, because emotional intelligence can be learned over a period of time. Okay. And next is the communication skills. And emotional intelligence play a very important role in how they communicate with others. So, they should also be trained in communication, how to communicate, especially as I already said, how to have an open communication. And then the third thing is how to manage the conflict. As I already said that in any organization, conflict is inevitable. Conflict is likely to arise, but how do you bring in a constructive conflict? How do you constructively manage all those things? So, some kind of training has to be given to the employees in these also. So, there are a number of management theories and the psychological concepts and a lot of experts who can give this training. So, probably the government should have some kind of tie-up with those organizations and who regularly give such training to the officers. And then there can be psychological sessions in order to how to develop positive attitude, how to overcome the negative attitude, and then how to manage stress and anxiety, and how you can leave a stress and anxiety which happens at work and we are not carrying forward that to home. So, these are all important things that every officer should be knowing about. So, stress and anxiety handling, and they can also be given certain kind of therapies like group and individual therapy. The officers can be called upon in group, and there can be a group therapy to deal with all those things. And if the situation is so serious, then individual therapy can also be applied. So, there has to be, I think, some kind of psychologist, at least in the important government offices, to address all these issues and to make it a part of the HR policies as well. They can incorporate these things in the HR policies and they can bring in regular training on all these areas. So, these things can go a long way in helping such issues in the offices. Okay. So, with this we have come to an end of this particular case study. Very important case study, a new dimension is something that he has followed. So, to get the PPT of this particular case study, you can get it from my Telegram channel, that is Babu Gunashekaran 337, and also do not miss out on important current affairs question that I put in my channel. Thank you very much. All the very best. God bless.
StudyIQ IAS, अब तैयारी हुई अफोर्डेबल।